You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 51 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. With me is the late Matt Lowe.
What's up? The late. They're going to think I died. I'm podcasting from beyond.
If you were any later, it could have been.
Right?
And the ever cheerful Jessica Salaji.
Woohoo!
How you guys doing?
Great.
I'm good.
How are you?
Busy.
Idle hands at the devil's workshop. I'm good. I survived a sewage backup at the house and stayed in a hotel. Had to find
So I'm going to interrupt you here because I was listening to some of the back podcasts that like y'all did when I wasn't there or whatever, and then one of them that I was here for that I had listened to, and I was making fun of you about being an elitist. In it, I guess it was right after my cruise when I said something, and you were like, well, it's like any other hotel, right? So Dave's earlier this week telling me this story about his sewage backing up, and he's like, and there wasn't a good hotel anywhere around. We had to stay in a Hilton Garden Inn. And I was like, Jesus, man.
Poor Dave.
First of all, the bed was horrible. And the staff was very, very nice. But you could tell I'm used to staying in different places when getting extra pillows, and the front desk clerk has to bring them up because there's nobody else working. I'm accustomed to staying places that have 24-hour staff. Housekeeping's there 24 hours a day.
Can't hide money.
Right?
Hide it. I can't find it.
You spend it all on hotel rooms.
Right? The Waldorf Astoria has it. Found it.
That's actually a very nice place to stay. Nice bedding, good sheets, high thread count. No, when you get old and fat, it makes a difference which way you lay when the bed is nice. Plus, we have a room that has more than one place to sit other than having to sit up on the bed and I don't know. Yes, I'm an elitist. Yes, I'm a snob.
It's okay.
No, we all have our things.
I just go ahead and play into the Democrats' hands.
Right.
Well, here's our First Amendment edition. New York City Police Department is telling Google to stop revealing the location of police checkpoints. They are demanding that Google yank the feature from its Waze traffic app that I love, and that's one of the reasons is that I love is they're calling it or saying it could be considered criminal conduct to reveal the location of checkpoints.
This is asinine. So, our tech guy who helps us with editing, Eric, said that they do this every couple of years. Like, this has happened before. I guess they cycle this in and say, oh, we're gonna send you a strongly worded letter, and then obviously there's nothing they can do because this isn't illegal. But I guess they're back on it.
Well, I don't understand how this is any different, Matthew, from flashing your brights.
I really don't either, other than I guess it's possible that when you're flashing your brights, you're likely on a road where there's not a whole lot you can do about it at that time. But if it's sitting there on Waze, you look at your stuff as you're planning your route, you can route around it.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that the reason you brought up flashing the lights is because the courts have already ruled that flashing your lights is protected under the First Amendment, because I think it was Missouri where a citizen was cited for flashing their lights and alerting people ahead of police, and they said that they were interfering with an investigation. But, I mean, we're talking about checkpoints that in most states have to be announced anyway.
Do they have to be announced in Georgia?
I believe so, but I don't know for sure.
Where do they announce that?
When?
Where?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if they have to notify the legal organ or what, but I mean, like, we've had them posted on Facebook, or even not even speed ones where they're going to be running radar and stuff, or doing a hands-free crackdown. They've announced it on Facebook. And actually, Governor's Office of Highway Safety down here recently announced that they were doing a seatbelt check, which really surprised me, because I'm like, well, all right, well, I mean, I wear my seatbelt anyway, but...
Well,
right. Now, I've seen them announce that, like, you know, hey, we're going to really be cracking down on it this whole weekend kind of thing. But...
Right.
You know, and as a liberty-minded person who opposes checkpoints anyway, we all agree that technology does not determine rights. So the right, your First Amendment right to express yourself, to transmit information, particularly about the government, does not change based on technology. So just because this is an app, and it's not you telling your neighbor, hey man, watch out for Main Street over there, they've got a checkpoint. The fact that the technology has changed doesn't change my right to inform fellow citizens about what the government is doing.
Right. I mean, what's the difference between sending a text message, picking up the phone, or calling, or telling someone when you get there that this is happening? There isn't one. And, I mean, unless it's a hands-free state, and if at that point it would be a hands-free violation, not criminal conduct for reporting police activity.
Remember, this is also the state that pounds its chest about stop and frisk. They have a long history of disregarding individual rights.
Yeah, they're the ones that outlawed big gulps or something, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. This is a quote from the deputy commissioner. I think she said, "The posting of such information for public consumption is irresponsible, since it only serves to aid impaired and intoxicated drivers to evade checkpoints and encourage reckless driving." Well, I would agree that it's irresponsible. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna do it, or I'm not gonna change my behavior because of it might be irresponsible. But it's not illegal. And second, if you talk to any attorney, they will all tell you, whether you're impaired or not, whether you've been drinking or not, you should avoid these things. They're a recipe for disaster.
Right.
Not just that, I have places to be.
Nothing pisses me off more than to get heading down the road, realize that I'm somewhere where I can't, flip a U-turn and get out of it.
Right. I mean, you got places to be. I've got places to be. Jessica's got places to be. She's got people to write about and annoy.
I do.
And you can't do that while you're sitting in a checkpoint. But so I know SCOTUS has held up the right to have these checkpoints. I don't see how it's not impeding the free travel of those who are not guilty. I don't see how it's not a Fourth Amendment violation. I'm not going to be one of these "am I being detained" guys. I'm a good sheep and hand over my insurance and driver's license, but good God, man.
Do you have insurance? I don't even have an insurance card anymore.
I do in the commercial vehicles because it depends on who's driving it. It needs to be available.
Oh, yeah.
But you could, and I've said that too. Is like, do you have your insurance card? Man, I don't know where it is. Pull it off the tag.
Right. Look it up. It's there.
It's just frustrating because, you know, I when I shared the article and I saw some other people sharing it, like, they just can't separate the difference between the First Amendment and the police overstepping, and they're like, well, it's dangerous, or it's this, or it's that. Well, it's dangerous to get on the road. Full stop. Like, it's dangerous out there in the world.
Right.
Get over it.
You know, the people, man, they have this whole thing, and we've all heard it. Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then why does it matter? Or, you know, just this whole, I don't know, like a culture of cop worship where is, you know, all they're doing the best they can, you know, kind of slack, you know, it's like, you know, I understand that, but they've got rules they have to play in. And I don't know, I hate the whole, like I said, worship of it. It just, you know.
Well, even from the standpoint of, you have enough power to do your job. Not everyone is using Waze. Like, you can do your job. You have the powers to do it. Do it. Stop doing this meddling in business and trying to punish Google. I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. For creating a technology? Who are you?
Right. I mean, are they going to go after Zuckerberg if I go on Facebook and say, boy, there's a checkpoint, took me forever at Highway 92 and 120. So, yeah, the technology just doesn't change your rights. The rights are very specifically enumerated as to what the government can and can't do, and it cannot limit the free exchange of information between citizens. And SCOTUS. Well, court's coming along. Of course, it's disappointed me in the past.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know who could even. I mean, we got some fools up there, but I don't think they would go this far.
Well, New York's dumpster, New Jersey.
And just like that, every person from New Jersey that listens to us is now gone.
Were they ever really here?
Well, they could have been, you know.
Look,
I've never heard of a libertarian from New Jersey.
We have a lot of transplants.
Tony Soprano was in the trash business and lived in Jersey.
Right?
Even Jersey knows they're Jersey. So anyway, New Jersey is attempting to tell gun manufacturers that they cannot put the plans to 3D guns on the interwebs. And this would be a state law mandating what can be on the internet.
Because the internet stops at the border. Yeah, man. Before we go any further, I just want to say, like, this kind of related, and it just speaks to where we are. There's a bill in the Georgia legislature about the Confederacy, and so I just happened to Google Confederate flag just to see, because some people were talking about buying flags, and you still can't get any search terms for Confederate flags to shop online on Google. So I guess I would tell New Jersey to recruit a company to scrub the internet for them instead of trying to go the legal route.
Buy Confederate flag, per se. Say that again. I guess I don't.
So.
Oh wow! Under shopping. Okay, I see it. Confederate flag did not match any shopping results.
Right. So, I mean, why don't they just? I don't know really if Google has come out if the interwebs in general have come out, they're generally like against our rights and things. So I'm surprised that they haven't like pushed for Google to scrub 3D gun printing stuff.
Don't give them ideas.
Stop thinking.
And we've talked about 3D guns before. It's a tempest in a teacup when you talk about 3D guns. They're mostly useless or single use. And no criminal is going out there and spending the money to buy a 3D printer to create a firearm that's going to shoot once or twice.
Well, but this doesn't have anything to do with the actual guns. Again, they're going after the people who create the plans that are available. Because if people remember that there was a lawsuit against this, that they put the things out there and they said you couldn't put the information out for free, so the guy started charging for them. So, of course, now states are enacting laws to come at them that way because, of course, the entrepreneurial spirit was more creative than the legislative mind. But they're not even going after, quote, the problem. They're going after plans, which is speech, which, again, is protected. Like, if you wanted to label them bleeping 3D guns, that can be on the internet. Like, you can't just censor all of this. It's infuriating.
Well, this is where we get into a Orwellian example. I mean, New Jersey wants to become the all-seeing eye and see what you're downloading, what information is being transmitted within its state. At what point does New Jersey start the NJSA, the New Jersey Security Agency, and monitor all the communication from the people in and out of its state?
Well, and this says, this goes beyond banning the manufacturing of firearms and instead criminalizes information about how to manufacture firearms. 3D firearms, nevertheless. But, I was under the impression that you could already find information on how to adjust and manipulate and alter regular traditional firearms on the internet. So why would this be any different?
Well, it's not. They want to use public safety and as a shield. And I was going to say that on the previous story, is the same people that believe that that their constitutional rights apply to, and this is a little foreshadowing, private entities. Whether it's the NFL and kneeling saying that they have a First Amendment right to do so under a private contract. And then they don't want to apply true constitutional rights to who it's supposed to restrict, which is government. It is infuriating that people don't understand the difference between private enterprise and private contracts and private interactions and that which government does to us. For your employer to tell you can't go to this website is one thing. And for a government to tell you can't go to this website is another. One is a private employment contract. The other is government overreach. This is a good time to say these are our opinions and not necessarily those of All on Georgia.
So, before we move on, what do you think the courts are going to do with this, with the gun, the 3D gun? Because it's challenged by this group, Defense Distributed, and then, of course, just general Second Amendment groups are backing them up in court. And they're suing the Attorney General because he's the one that has kind of spearheaded the movement. So, do you think the courts will side with the First Amendment and keep the Second Amendment out of it? Because that's pretty much how you need to look at it if you understand freedom.
Right. Well, transfer of information, and you take it on a slippery slope argument, which I don't necessarily like all the time when you start talking about slippery slope arguments. But it's the transmission of information. This ties directly in with the first story we talked about in New York. It's the transmission of information between citizens, and I think the High Court will hold it up under the First Amendment.
I hope you're right. I mean, these types of things are so important. So important.
Absolutely. So we have a law proposed in the Senate. We're going to call it Casey's Law. So we'll give it a cute name. Would change Georgia code to make us a two-party consent state for recording. This relates directly back to Clay Tippins recording the private conversation with Casey Cagle that, let's say, didn't help his campaign. I'm not going to give that recording credit like the AJC did for defeating him, because Cagle got his ass whooped.
I think I agree with you, but I think it did play a heavy role, and I think that it required the elected officials to distance themselves from Cagle when they had aligned themselves with him through the primary, and then in the runoff, when the community and the people were outraged, they had to separate themselves, and so this is them coming back around for Cagle saying, "We're so sorry this happened to you."
Well, too bad we can't apply this to government and say, you need my consent for wiretapping me.
Right?
So, if I may, this is by Jeff Mullis, who is from Northwest Georgia, who is the Rules Chairman in the Senate. I can't think of anything he's ever done that's been worth supporting, and I don't say that from a libertarian perspective. I say that from a recovering Republican perspective. Like, even a John McCain Republican would not agree with most of what he does. Like, he is a terrible lawmaker. He donated over $10,000 to Cagle, and he got Butch Miller and Steve Gooch, Larry Walker, and a couple other powerful senators to sign on to this bill. And the way that one-party consent works is that if I'm having a private conversation with Dave and we're in sitting at a table in a restaurant or even sitting in an office and I'm recording, I'm the consenting party. I never have to tell Dave. Dave never has to consent. I'm party to it, so I'm the one-party consent. Two-party consent means that not only do I have to let Dave know I'm recording, he has to consent and on audio so that I can cover my behind and not get sued. It's outrageous.
You know, and when you set the story out to us, I told you that there's not a whole lot I have to say about it that was clean enough for the podcast. I mean, it's nothing. It'd be nothing but Eric bleeping me, because it is so absurd and such a reaction. It is nothing more than protection for people. First of all, when it applies to a government official, we pay them. They work for us. They allegedly work for us. If we should be privy to their conversations. Anyway.
Right. I could think of a very few conversations that we shouldn't be privy to.
National security.
Maybe. It kind of, like, in my mind, it kind of depends on, what area of national
battle
security
plans.
they're talking about. Yes. Battle plans.
Right.
I'm down with that.
I can't think of anything our state lawmakers do that is important enough to keep us out. And in 2019, you should assume as an elected official that you're being recorded everywhere. I record every conversation I have with people when I'm doing my job. Like, everything. Because everything matters when it's elected officials. You can come back and, whether it's to hold them accountable and make sure that they adhere to their word that they said, or if it's to, prove that they're doing something wrong.
Or right, as is the case with body cameras on police officers. We find out that the vast majority of police interactions are proper.
Absolutely.
No one loves a body camera more than a good cop. So I'm going to put air quotes around good politician, a good public official should welcome people recording him.
I'm going to name off the states that are two-party consent. And you can tell me if you think Georgia fits in with any of these. California, Connecticut, Florida, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Washington.
They all sent money to Abrams.
The only ones that I want to, the only reason I want to be like any of those states is for the weed. And I don't even smoke weed. But that's the only reason I want to be like those states. Like, this is the government meddling in private conversations. If I'm having a conversation with another adult, that adult is consenting to have a conversation with me. Whether or not it's recorded indefinitely or not, it's still a consensual conversation. If they don't want to be recorded or risk being recorded, they can shut up.
Oh, absolutely. And a voice recorder does nothing more than back up your recollection of the events. If you say, hey, Dave was harassing me, and everybody say, no, you're not remembering it correctly, and then you play the tape, you're like, oh, wow, he really was. Or, no, I don't think he meant it like that.
Sure.
It's safer for everyone involved to have evidence. I mean, it is safer for all of us if something's being recorded, because and I don't mean by the government, there's something to go back on and say, look, here's the evidence. But it goes to, I was kind of making fun of my local lawmakers, because that's what I do. And they were taking pictures, totally innocent pictures with constituents. And I'm like, you better make sure both hands are visible.
All right, so here's what's going to happen, right? Is if they get this passed, are we going to start seeing evidence thrown out?
Yes.
Like, say, in a child abuse case, because it was caught on a nanny cam.
Well, a lot of states, not all of them, but a lot of states have exceptions for crimes. But they could still sue you civilly because, even if they were convicted of something, they could come back and sue you civilly for violating their, quote, right to privacy that Jeff Mullis says you have. He says that everyone has a right to know whether they're being recorded or not.
Yeah, he also said that this was in no way related to recording Cagle, which, I spent a better part of the day trying to find a stronger, word or way to convey my thoughts on that than to just say that Jeff is a damn liar. But I couldn't,
That happened to Cagle, and every one of them who've had similar conversations. Now remember what Cagle said. He said he pushed through bad legislation because it would hurt his opponent. And that it's not about, what's the quote? It's not about good policy, it's about politics.
Right.
And that from his mouth. And and I'm sure that helped make that runoff night shorter, because Matt and I were together and we were fully expecting to be up late waiting for the gubernatorial stuff to come through, and we were not.
157 of 159 counties in Georgia rejected Casey Cagle.
Or as the AJC put it in their article.
Right. But I can't even count the ways and the number of times that this has benefited the people. There are times when there's something that happens between private citizens and they go to the media like Clay Tippins did. There are times when this has saved people's jobs, like women who are being sexually harassed on the job, like Dave said. I had a woman, I wrote about this article and I put the contact information for our senators in there, and people started emailing the committee and the sponsors and everything, and they were CCing me so that I could see that they were doing it. And it was a good amount of people for the middle of the week. And one woman messaged me and was like, this literally saved my job. She said, I was being harassed by a supervisor and I was going to be fired. And the recordings were the only thing that stopped me from that happening. And then you think about the Acorn scandals with elections in 2008 and the Planned Parenthood things. I mean, Mitt Romney remember when he said at a private event that something about Obama voters? And I've used it. Like I said, it has helped me. It has gotten me out of binds. It has helped me prove that elected officials are doing something wrong. It is a powerful tool for the media. And it's a complete infringement on the First Amendment.
Well, remember, the First Amendment was meant to apply to the press. And you're absolutely right. As much as we hear the term fake news, and I hate that term, as just being overly simplistic and anyway, it is, and I think there's better ways of saying it, more articulate ways of saying it, but I'm an elitist and a snob. Here's the thing. If Jessica says, hey, this judge did this, this, and this, okay, I can believe her or not. When she produces the audio, there's not a whole lot the opposition can say other than try to do damage control. And I'm reminded of a story that I've brought up on the show before when we were talking about men's rights. A Army Ranger, big dude, strong guy, was not going to hit a woman, his soon-to-be ex-wife was beating the snot out of him. And then claiming that he was the abusive person and trying to take the kid and take him to the cleaners. And he finally recorded her and took that evidence to court. I assure you he didn't have her consent to record her, with her, because again, this is a civil case. This is not a criminal case. Record her being, what's the technical term? Nuts. So that's what we're putting at risk to protect politicians who don't want their conversations out about the public being in public.
I can't think of a worse reason than another elected official to have an initiative like this. And the example that Dave brought up about a judge, like that literally happened to me in South Georgia, where it was an upstanding member of the community. People would have not believed me when he tossed me out of his office and threatened to, file criminal charges against me and things like that, and refused my records request for documentation had I not been recording. But instead, I was able to come home, put the whole thing on the internet, write about it, put the video at the bottom, and not a single person questioned me because I had everything to back it up. And he was in his office. Like, if I can't record an elected official in their office, what? Give me a break.
And I heard a long time ago, before you had cell phones that would record this, going back to when I was in banking, is never say anything you don't want read back to you in court.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And we're focusing on the elected official aspect of this, but it goes so much further. They've been talking about the effects that this would have on fraud investigations and scams on the phone. And if someone calls me and I want to record the conversation, I'm not asking permission. And who's going to say, yes, I consent, if they're up to something bad? They're going to hang up or they're going to walk out of the room. Like, no, this isn't supposed to be a world of gotchas, but if it's a world of accountability, and it's one level that we have that shouldn't be removed.
Especially when you're talking about transgressions. This is not a case where we're dropping mics into other people's conversations, where you're sitting sitting outside somebody's window and listening to the conversation between a husband and wife on what's going on. This is me talking to you and recording what we say between us. So, as you said, you are already consenting to speaking with me.
Right. Especially the media. If you're talking to the media, you're supposed to assume that it's on the record. This whole, I don't know. And I really want to call out the ACLU, because our Georgia chapter of the ACLU has generally been spot on when it comes to legislation in our state. And they totally have wet the bed on this concept. The director was quoted in the AJC saying the organization was, quote, keeping an eye on the bill's development to make sure that this legislation does not infringe on the constitutional rights of Georgians. First of all, as written, it does. Second of all, the time to act is now before it gets to committee, because you can have an impact, because all of the flack that happened on day one after the bill was released and all the emails they got already forced one sponsor to say, well, actually, I think I'm having second thoughts about this. So the time to act is now. The time is not to keep an eye on something and then try to stop it after it soars through the Senate. So I would like the ACLU to get a nice slap on the wrist for the week.
So to quote Bob Marley, every time I plant a seed, he say, kill it before it grows.
Yes. Kill them all.
That's Metallica.
So, what if there's 3 parties?
Doesn't matter.
Long as 2 of them are consent?
Nope. One party.
No. In a 2-party consent scenario, you could reasonably have a third person there that doesn't know they're being recorded.
No, the way that the legislation reads is that if it's not one party, it's all parties.
All right, so what's that going to do? Like we know, because, like with our cell phones, we hit the agree to it portion where it says it's going to listen to conversations. So how's that work?
Well, you agree to a private contract with your cell phone.
Right, I do, but do you agree to that private contract with my cell phone?
I mean, no, but I don't really know how you.
That's what I mean. Is like, how's that going to work when there's
that's
more than...
different though, because it's not a party to the conversation. That's a whole other element of recording. I mean, that your phone is not a party of our conversation, so it wouldn't fall under this.
So Google is not?
No. Google is not a participant in the conversation. It's not a party. That would fall under some...
No, I think what Matt's saying, it's not that it's a party, Google doesn't have consent from you and I talking on the phone, or the iPhone has my consent to record us because I'm on an iPhone, but doesn't have yours because you're calling from a payphone.
Right. And I'm just saying that might be against a law somewhere that no one's challenged yet, but it's not this law. That's all I was saying.
It's also it's not a thing because it doesn't come up because Google doesn't use it in court. Not yet.
No, but Amazon, they get subpoenaed all the time, and I'm sure that once Google Home devices are as prevalent.
Oh, you want to know them? I'm an a-hole. So if you have an Alexa in your house, and I walk in, and you don't have it locked, I will tell it to order adult toys, just so your Amazon for the next 2 months will have nothing but adult toys popping up on it.
Right. Add stuff to your shopping list.
So I had a friend have to explain to his wife that I did that, because she's like, "Why is this popping up in our Facebook feed?" Sorry, that's off topic and on down a hog trail. And I'm sure Jessica's got her head in her hands, going, "What the hell am I doing with these 2 idiots?"
It's okay. We're 40 minutes in, and it's the first time I thought that today. So.
Damn, we did good.
I'm going to learn to read. But yeah, you're right. Look, I know disagreement probably is better radio, but I think we're all pretty well outraged on this one. This
one is made for odd bedfellows too, because like it first of all, none of the sponsors are lawyers, and so I think from a lot of the emails that I got after writing the article, and a lot of the people who were doing call to actions were lawyers, because they understand the power of one party consent state and what it means for the justice system. And so I think that, it's weird that you see people like, because as written, it doesn't protect law enforcement. As written, it doesn't have any, exemptions for them. And like it's kind of like with Marcy's law. It was like the people against it, the vocal opponents were the ones in favor of liberty, and kind of made for like law enforcement, attorneys, general public, people who were out. I don't know. It's made for interesting people to be against collectively.
It is. I mean, when I'm on the same side as the ACLU, well, the national, it's just, that's the funny thing about leaning libertarian is you kind of step in, kind of tiptoe through different pools of people at once. This is really, really bad legislation.
It is.
I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's really bad, dangerous legislation. It is the antithesis of sunshine laws.
And if it's risky saying this on day 8 or 9, but if I had to choose a bill to stop and not be able to speak out against any other ones this session, it would be this one. Because personally, it completely impacts my job and my day-to-day, but it's the most egregious.
It really is. And it does nothing but empower offenders. And it is designed to do nothing but protect elected officials.
No, Jeff said that this has nothing to do with that Cagle thing.
Oh, I'm wrong then.
He said it right there on the AJC article. Has nothing to do with that.
Well, here's the thing. When those recordings came out from Tippins, every one of their buttholes puckered. Like, oh, what did I say to Tippins?
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And to Clay's credit, he knew he was burning lots of bridges when he released that stuff. He knew that nobody was going to talk to him again. Well, a couple weeks ago, we had the scooter legislation. Now we've got Uber legislation. House Bill 74, co-sponsored by Matt and my representative, District 19, Joseph Gullett, would force rideshare companies to allow their privately contracted drivers to carry a firearm if licensed. Jessica, on a scale of 0 to what the hell were you thinking, where does this rank?
Pretty high on the wrongest.
The wrongerest.
The wrongerest. I'm so sick of legislation interfering with private contracts and agreements between individuals and entities. Like, you drive for Uber, you know the policy when you agree to drive for Uber or Lyft or whatever it may be, and you're agreeing to their rules. If you don't like them, start your own rideshare company.
Yeah, I agree. I understand, though, how this bill's gaining traction, especially with some of the new guys. It seems easy. It's pro-gun. So, like, I understand why it's gaining the kind of traction that it is.
How is it pro-gun, though? It doesn't increase anybody's freedom.
Government doesn't do anything for me.
Well, it's pro-gun. It doesn't have to be.
How is it pro-gun?
It doesn't have to be pro-freedom in order to be pro-gun.
But it is already legal to carry in your car. No, it's legal.
If you're an Uber driver.
If you're an Uber driver, they don't haul your ass off to jail for carrying a gun in your car.
You just lose your job.
Right.
So what they want to do is stop you from losing your job.
And this goes back to something I said before about the applying rights to private contracts. You don't have constitutional rights between you and your employer. They can tell you what you can put on social media. They can tell you if you can carry a gun into their building. They can tell you what to wear.
Right. Now, under current law, they have to very specifically have it as written policy that you cannot carry at work.
Which I believe they do. I mean, this isn't like a gray area. The company has come out because it's a liability for them. They don't want... I mean, it's a liability regardless. Like, if I'm a driver and someone shoots me and you've taken away my Second Amendment right or you limited it, you could arguably sue them. But they don't want the liability of... They have a better chance of winning that in court than they do of you shooting someone while you're commuting them.
Well,
I don't know. I just know how I would handle that. I would just continue to carry, and if I had to shoot somebody,
100%, yes, but that doesn't mean we need a bill for it.
well,
No, I agree. I don't think we need a bill for it. And I don't want my position that this is pro-gun legislation to be misconstrued as support for it. I'm just saying that because it can be chalked up as pro-gun and an easy win, so to speak, for the gun.
Well, these legislators get up there, they start running around like kindergartners on a field trip and screaming like morons, and they latch their names onto the first thing that sounds pro-gun and throw it out there when they could be doing things like constitutional carry, doing things that increase freedom, but they won't do that. They're gonna mess with the two companies that have done more than any piece of legislation or law enforcement agency to reduce drunk driving, and screw with them.
And just so we've named all of the sponsors of this bill, it's Scott Turner from Cherokee, Heath Clark from Bibb, Houston County area, Alan Powell, who's chairman of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee, Jason Ridley, who is just out there floating, and then, like you said, Joseph Gullett. I mean, they're all... If I had to give them a score, I'd give them all a C+ for their understanding of the Constitution.
Well, and I'll disclose, I endorsed Joseph in the runoff against Paulette Rickstraw. I publicly endorsed him, and I still stand behind that decision, because there ain't no way Rickstraw would be any better.
She'd be
oh
all
yeah,
over
she would, and we still have Chris Severe. Go to hell, Chris. And now I'm sued. So
he'll subpoena you.
Yeah, exactly. So look, I'm not ready to grade their Joseph's performance yet, but this...
I'm not grading their performance. I want to be clear about that. I'm just grading, like, this is a very clear indicator of what they think the role of government is, and it's a mistake.
And I agree. It is a statist response. It is also indicative of people who have never run their own business. That the idea of letting government dictate what my employees can and can't do while they're on my clock is repugnant.
Well, and some people made the argument that they're not employees, that they're contractors. But again, even contractors enter into a contract that has parameters, and the parameters in the policy say you can't have a gun while you drive these cars.
And I would say the fact that they're contractors makes it even more solid. They sign a contract saying, this is what I will do for you, and this is what you will do for me. And I will even down to the Uber driver I had on Sunday was kind of driving a crappy car. But your car's going to look like this. It's going to be clean. These are the conversations you're not allowed to have. You are not going to exchange personal information with the fares. They are our customer, and we pay you. Those are all things that you agree to when you become a driver. If you don't like it, don't do it. This is not the Barbary Coast. They're not Shanghaiing people and throwing them into Uber cars.
Yet.
Is that too obscure of a reference, Matthew? the idea that Uber's out there, because they're based out of San Francisco, with a club smacking people in the back of the head, and they wake up in a car.
Take me home. Okay. $13.75.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of those things where we're going to agree on the fact that it's garbage legislation. It will do nothing but increase the chance that Uber pulls out of Georgia, that Lyft pulls out of Georgia, because the insurance, their liability insurance to operate in a state that mandates that you allow your drivers to carry weapons is going to skyrocket. So they'll either have to raise prices in Georgia, lower compensation, or just say, screw it, it's not worth doing business in Georgia.
Well, they may just require their drivers to maintain a personal liability policy.
You're not driving for Uber because you're rolling in cash.
A personal liability policy really isn't.
But here's the thing: is the first negligent discharge that goes off, that happens one of these things, and their policy is to allow firearms. They're going to sue the company. It's not going to go to the driver. Driver doesn't have deep enough pockets. Now, if something happens, it's one of those things. Everybody knows that drivers carry. Why can't we all just be cool? Just be cool about it, man. Just you don't mention it. You don't tell the company doesn't ask. It's just be cool about it. And politicians, get the hell out of private interactions. It's not, get back in your box. It's not your place. This is one more reason that is it Montana that has the great model. The legislature meets once every 2 years for 10 days. Good God, man. It's like they don't think they are going to earn that their paycheck if they're not dropping bills every 15 friggin' minutes.
Have you seen their speeding stuff?
Which one? No.
In Montana. So the speed limit, is whatever, and then at night it turns to 55, right? But they don't do a whole lot of traffic stuff, and they'll get you, you can be doing 100 miles an hour, and if they pull you over for whatever reason, it's like a $5 ticket, and it's payable right then, and the receipt, it reads something like, thanks for visiting the great state of Montana. Next time, slow down so you can see it.
Well, there's, and they're Democrats, so it's not going to go anywhere, but there's they want a study committee to study the decriminalization of all traffic-related offenses here in Georgia, so that none of them would be actual criminal violations, or misdemeanors, but instead civil infractions, which I thought was interesting. I'd like them to do the study committee just because I'd like to know the report, like who the testimony's from and all of that. But
and Jessica, as an
Right.
expert on the Gold Dome, I have a stupid question.
Mm-hmm.
So study committees are a bunch of legislators that meet separately, right?
correct.
And they're compensated separately for that?
Correct. They earn a per diem day, so every day that they gather outside of the 40-day session, which all of the study committees happen outside the 40-day session, they get, I can't remember the number, but it's somewhere, I think maybe $150.
I think it's 100
Plus travel.
Per day.
Plus,
Registered.
Travel, snacks, all that.
yeah. So, is
You
that
can
why
add
we? Is that why we have so
Yes.
many study committees on study committees?
Yes, I encourage them. I mean, I encourage, on my policy analysis, I encourage them to vote against every study committee because I don't feel like it's a good use of time. Like, the process should be, you're there for 3 months. Like, have the people come now, you know? We don't need to be paying you $175 a day plus everything else for 9 months to study dyslexia.
And tour the state and do whatever as your study committee.
Right.
And a lot of it's stuff we already know. The
Absolutely. Or, worse, they figure out what they want the results to say, and then they have the people come testify to confirm what they want.
Oh, sure.
Like they did with the hands-free law.
Oh, sure. They've been doing that with global warming for years.
You mean climate change?
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember Paul and Ann Ehrlich, who in the 70s and 60s wrote a book called The Population Bomb, and we were all going to die in an ice age because we wouldn't have a long enough growing season to feed everybody, and there are too many people, and we'd all die. And that was settled science, too. Anyway, if you like our rambling and meandering through subjects, and Matt and I veering off on hog trails and Jessica having to pull us back on, please make sure you've subscribed to the podcast and give us all the stars, all the way to the right.
All the stars.
Interact with us on Facebook. Send us a private message. Say, last week sure was better when Matt Lowe wasn't there. Dave is the worst host ever. Yeah. Jessica hates soldiers, firefighters, cops,
Children. Teachers.
her co-host. But definitely give us your feedback, share us with your friends. Do we have any closing thoughts?
Yes. Go to allingeorgia.com and look up the article on two-party consent and email the Judiciary Committee and tell them you oppose Senate Bill 59. It doesn't have to be anything extensive. Just let them know that you oppose it. You don't have to have a reason. It's all about numbers for them. They hate when they get emails. So send them an email and tell your mom to send them an email too.
Be polite.
Yeah, don't cuss.
Yeah, don't start it off with "Dear Senator Shithead."
Or as my mom would begin her email. Matt, closing thoughts?
Or thoughts?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I have any closing thoughts. I did have some news, though, that's happened since the last time I was on. My kids are real active with Boy Scouts, and I got bamboozled into accepting the Scoutmaster position with my kids' troop. So for some reason, there's the parents of 35 young boys in Paulding County that think it's a good idea to hand their kids over to me a few times a month to, help mold and form into young men. So far, it's been fun and time-consuming.
That's a horrible idea. Have 35 little Matt Lowe's running around. No, you might actually teach them stuff like, stuff like Boy Scouts were supposed to learn, hunting, fishing, trapping, surviving out in the woods, have them eating a squirrel instead of, some casserole that a troop mom brings in. Well, as this podcast drops, at the end of the week, pitchers and catchers report for spring training for the Atlanta Braves. So we are in the dead zone between football and baseball. And soon spring training will start to kick off and we'll be into baseball season.
Woo! Can't wait. So excited. Oh my gosh.
So is it going to be BB&T Stadium?
It's and what Matt's referred to is BB&T bought SunTrust Bank, and it's going to be a bloody, bloody, bloody merger. There are 740 branches that are within 2 miles of each other. That means that you're going to see half of those close. Atlanta being the headquarters for SunTrust, you're going to see a lot of high-level executives popping their golden parachutes, and unfortunately for the lower executives, they will not be. But to answer your question, the new corporation with their merger will have a new name. It will not be BB&T.
Oh, really?
That's my understanding. This one's a shocker. This one goes to the deregulation of Trump, which deregulation is generally a good thing. This is the first regional large merger since 2008, since Dodd-Frank and everything else came out. My background's in banking, and the reason I left banking was being bought. I was with Wachovia, being bought twice by the same bank. But it's a good time not to be in banking in Atlanta because there's going to be a lot of people in the job market driving the price of employment down, looking for jobs. Which is good if you're hiring or if you hold bank stock. Not giving stock advice. So that is the most interesting part of the show right there, is me rambling on about insider baseball with banking. So on that note, for Matt Lowe, Jessica Szilagyi, I'm Dave Roberts. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Later.